My name is Chris Evan, and I'm the CEO of Survival Dispatch. I was a member of our national powerlifting team for many years and won many state, national, and world championships. Even though I'm in great shape for being 55 years old, I am not immune to father time. Most of us feel weaker and make more trips to the bathroom as we get older. U.S. Army research has led to a breakthrough for the #1 water for older Americans. It's not a special sports drink, but a mix with essential nutrients most hydration drinks lack. Keyword, hydration. These nutrients are proven to enhance muscle strength, reduce soreness, and improve bladder health. A Texas doctor leveraged this research and formulated a drink mix to help you stay strong. Click the link below for up to 44% off at nativehydrate.com/dispatch, plus free shipping and a free gift. This is one of the best deals I've seen for high-quality BCAA drink mixes. And we're back. Man, what a week this has been. I don't know about y'all, but I haven't got a wink of sleep. I've been so excited about the prospects of things. I got Jeff MD with me tonight. He's in the green room, and John will be joining us in maybe 10, 15 minutes or so. We had Pilgrim James lined up, but he got called into a meeting at the last minute. And we were also hoping to have Lieutenant Colonel Doc Pete on tonight, but he's at a fundraiser, ironically, not too far from me here in Florida. So he sent me some notes to read as far as his input tonight is concerned. So we're going to cover the top 10 things that we feel Trump should execute on as soon as he's sworn in. So some of them are executive orders. Actually, some of them are just initiatives. Executive order wouldn't necessarily be the right term for that. I want to mention quickly that if you go to patreon.com/survival dispatch, you can sign up for a free membership. You get 50% of the stuff we post over there. If you pay $9.99 a month for a paid membership, you get extra stuff. You get everything. You get the behind the scenes stuff. You get an invite to our private chat on Signal. So check it out if you could. We appreciate everybody who supports us there. So I'm going to bring Jeff into the stage now. Jeff, what the heck's going on out there in Arizona? I'm hearing that there's some votes being flipped from Kamala to the other guy.
Arizona is so screwed up.
Kerry Lake, pardon me.
Kerry Lake, yeah. Arizona's just a mess on the way they count their ballots, and everybody knows that it's been like that for a while. They're finally getting some people in the legislature to say, let's just do what Florida does. We still don't have a winner on, we don't know how many votes Trump got. He's going to win the state. Kerry Lake, we're not sure where that one's at. Gallego is ahead, but we don't know. In my area, Juan Ciscomani was behind. Now he's ahead, but they're just ridiculously slow at counting the ballots here. And I just don't get it. But it's painful. And it was like this 2 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, I hate to go there, but I think they're cheating. I've read a couple things today that indicated that there's some anomalies. I'll tell you something that has never squared with me. And the first time that it was really big that I saw it was in Kentucky, where the vast majority of the votes for governor went to the Democrat, but the attorney general got way more votes as a Republican. I don't know anybody who goes, yeah, I want the Democrat governor and the Republican attorney general.
Well, and that's what we're looking at here. District by district, who knows? Okay, yeah, your congressman, you may like him, you may hate him. Juan Ciscomani's mine. Yeah, I'm not his biggest fan, but better than the one he's running against. But when you're looking at a governor's race and a senator's race, those are both statewide elections. The number of votes cast in the presidential contest and the senatorial contest should be pretty damn close. Because how many people go into the voting booth and say, okay, I'm going to vote for Trump, but I'm not going to vote for anybody for Senate?
Yeah.
That doesn't happen.
Exactly.
And right now, I think we have something like 50,000 more votes cast for the senator race than the presidential race. And it's like, no, something's wrong there. That makes zero sense.
that was one of the anomalies that I saw. It's just crazy stuff. So Mike had an appointment at the VA this evening, so he won't be with us.
In about 9 years when they get to him.
Right. I forgot to do the conflicted question last night, but I'll do it this time around. I remembered this time. With no immediate law enforcement of any kind, neighborhood after neighborhood are raided by looters. The neighborhoods that survived the longest had checkpoints and barricades to deter invaders. How would you construct a barricade and man a checkpoint in your neighborhood if you needed to? So for those of you who are new to Survival Dispatch News, that's a question from one of the decks from conflictedthegame.com. It's all typically post-apocalyptic stuff. Originally was intended to get some mental reps on considering strange scenarios that you would see, kind of Walking Dead type stuff, but it's also evolved into a test of morals. So it's an interesting game. And when I remember, we ask it at the beginning of each episode, and then we ask for you to go ahead and put your comments down below. So I got a couple opening videos before I go to the comments from Doc Pete. So let's get them up first, because I think there's a pretty important message here. Once we hit Doc Pete stuff, though, it's all about the top 10 things that Trump should do. But this stuff is crazy.
We did not expect this result, but we are prepared to respond to this result. And my office has been preparing for several months because we've been here before. We faced this challenge before, and we use the rule of law to fight back. And we are prepared to fight back once again. Because as the Attorney General of this great state is my...
So I got to ask, is she one of these reptile people? Because when she says her S's, it's like, just curious.
Job to protect and defend the rights of New Yorkers and the rule of law. And I will not shrink from that responsibility.
All right. So let's have a look here at one of Trump's attorneys' response to that specific video, keeping in mind that Jack Smith and the bullshit document stuff has been dropped by the DOJ, was announced today. It's highly likely that Judge Merchan is going to drop the hush money trial, which really leaves this as the last one to deal with. But Mike Davis cuts right to the point here.
Let me just say this to Big Tish James, the New York Attorney General. I dare you to try to continue your lawfare against President Trump in his second term, because listen here, sweetheart, we're not messing around this time, and we will put your fat ass in prison for conspiracy against rights, and I promise you that. So think long and hard before you want to violate President Trump's constitutional rights or any other American's constitutional right. It's not going to happen again.
We've been warning people on the show, Mike. This isn't the same Trump administration. Stop messing around. Don't rig elections. Don't illegally vote. Don't try the funny business, because we know the team this time and they are not effing around.
So I actually have a couple more tabs up that I want to share.
Can we make him Attorney General?
Yeah, no kidding. Actually, who we should have for Attorney General is Andrew Bailey from Missouri, to be quite frank. It would be a loss to Missouri, but it would be just such an incredible thing for us on a national level. I got two more tabs. This one's a quick video. Next one's just an article. And then we'll have a quick discussion on this before we jump into the top 10 executive orders.
We'll get the resignation of every single senior official who touched the Afghanistan calamity to be on my desk at noon on Inauguration Day. You know, you have to fire people. You have to fire people when they do a bad job. We never fire anybody. You got to fire them like on The Apprentice. You fired. You did a terrible, terrible disservice to our country. You get fired when that happens. Nobody got fired. Nobody ever gets fired in this administration. It's amazing. All the bad things that have happened, nobody ever gets fired. The problem is when you fire somebody, they always end up writing a book about you, you know? I've had more books written about me. I fire a lot of people when they don't do a good job. I get a book written about me by all these losers that get fired.
You gotta love Trump's sense of humor. And the last one here is that big blank spot is because the ad blocker nuked the big ad there. But Hamas calls for immediate end to war after Trump election win. It was almost 12 hours exactly to the minute when they announced that they were going to end their war with Israel, knowing full well that Trump wouldn't put up with their shit. And that would be the end of them. So, Jeff, thoughts on the first four things? Let's talk Letitia James for a second. What are your thoughts on her pledged ongoing lawfare?
Well, she's got two big issues. Well, he doesn't have any control over her. She's a state elected official. But she's handled those cases so poorly and so biased that everybody knows it, everybody sees it. And none of them will survive an appeal to a fair court once they get to, and she knows that. No judge wants to be overturned. So you may see someone like Marshawn and people like that going, we're going to let this one go. And no attorney general does. And because she works so closely with the Biden Attorney General's office, the DOJ, which she's not supposed to do. They've got some problems there that could come back to bite them in the ass. Because if you, like the guy said, conspiracy to deny rights, when you have the number 3 person in the DOJ, quote unquote, quitting his job to go to New York to take a lower paying job, a lesser job, just so he can prosecute Trump. And if you have phone conversations between the Attorney General of New York and the Department of Justice, that's collusion.
Yep. And
that's against the law. They conspired to deny Donald Trump his legal rights. Not to mention they changed the law just to go get him. They ignored the whole unanimous jury thing, all that. There's so much wrong with this case. But they are open to legal sanction, including disbarment, and they should be thrown in jail. And if she was smart, she would back away and say the people have spoken and pray to God they don't come after her with both barrels.
100%.
I'm not saying they're going to shoot her with a double barrel shotgun.
Right. Yeah. John, I don't know if you caught the first little bit there. We had a couple of videos on with Letitia James and Mike Davis, which is one of Trump's attorneys. And we don't need to go back and replay them, but he basically said to her, if you keep pursuing like this, we will put your fat ass in jail. His exact words. It was beautiful. And we had a video of Trump where he said that any commander in the military who played a part of the debacle on the exit from Afghanistan needs to have their resignation on his desk by 12 noon on Inauguration Day, or he's going to fire them anyway. So it was good. And the next one, the last one, was that Hamas, 12 hours after Trump was declared the winner, said, we're ending our war with Israel. So Trump's not even in office, and he's already having a positive impact on.
Is this shades of Reagan in the Iran hostage situation?
100%.
Because we see what real strength actually is, and when you see real strength, you know not to mess with it. Because all that Biden said was "don't" or "nope" or "do not come" or whatever it was, and that is the perfect example of what actual strength gets stuff done. I'm excited about this new administration. What I've been seeing, I tell you what, his video about the celebration for the 250th year anniversary of the United States, beautiful. Let's be patriotic. Let's love this country because this country's done so much for everybody else. And these people that are whining and crying and all this stuff, Steve Dace put out a perfect video of like, you guys treated us like crap the last 4 years. Guess what? You're going to actually benefit from tax reduction. You're going to benefit from all of these things that he's going to do. And you don't really deserve it, but you're going to get the benefit of this. And you can whine and cry about the oppression that you're going to receive that's not actually coming.
Yeah. Let me address this question quickly. I'm not sure who this is. You don't get sent the Essentials Guide. It's on Patreon. You download it for free per the instructions that were given. So I don't appreciate you leaving a comment like this, that we somehow gypped you out of our Essentials Guide. No such thing happened. read. You'd be amazed at what you can pick up if you hit RTFM. So go to the Patreon, click on the shopping store, go to the Essentials Guide. You download it for free because you have a membership. But don't put shit on our live videos saying that we gypped you out of a guide. That's bullshit, man. If you have any type of issue like that, email support@survivaldispatch.com. That was a pretty shitty thing of you to do, to put that in a public forum. Not impressed. You can go ahead and cancel your membership, by the way, if you want. Won't hurt my feelings at all. All right. So Doc Pete Chambers was going to join us tonight, but he's tied up at a fundraiser in Ocala, which is less than an hour west of here, straight down the road, straight down State Road 40. So he sent in what he feels are the top 3 initiatives that Trump needs to address. And he called it there's been a triune attack on this nation. And Jeff, what was your interpretation of that? Because I've never heard that word. And when I looked it up, I got a bunch of different answers.
Well, yeah, triune is just 3 as 1. And I think he was essentially talking about heart, mind, and soul.
Yep.
That they've gone after, they tried to discourage people. That's the heart. They've, there's the physical, you think about the food and the vaccines and all the other crap that everybody has to do. And then, he's talking about the soul, to the very heart of America. And yeah, it's a 3-phased attack that we've put up with. They've attacked the character of America, and they tried to make it like you're embarrassed to be an American. And the people, as he puts it, the people are the center of gravity to this country. And when you attack the people, you call them garbage and deplorables and all that. And then, they're dictating what medicines you can take and not take, regardless of what your doctor says. They're trying to force you to take vaccines you don't need. The food supply is pretty much crap these days. So, yeah, it's a 3-prong attack on the people. We need to turn it around.
That makes sense. So Doc sent a very thorough message on this. So let me get through this here. So the first one he called spirit, that there's been an attack on our character as Americans and our faith and our morally bankrupt institutions. Number 2, the soul of America, the very heart and soul of America. The people are center of gravity, and we keep her heart beating. Attacks upon the mind. Some are disenfranchised, some demoralized, some just broken. So this is a result of the ongoing attack by the globalists. And number 3, the body. Along those lines, an attack on our physical beings. So it's all the stuff you just mentioned, the meds, the vaccines, the food, fitness, etc. And so here's Doc's answer to those 3 things that he feels Trump needs to address and get fixed as soon as possible. Priority number 1, free the J6 political prisoners and pardon Tina Peters, Edward Snowden, and Ross Ulbricht. Free all J6 political prisoners, no exceptions. Beyond pardoning them, offer them $100 million each in compensation for their pain, suffering, and loss of years of their lives. Their persecution by the Biden regime was inhumane, lawless, and a gross violation of the rule of law. Tina Peters, although prosecuted under Colorado state law, absolutely needs to be freed. Make that a priority, and the result will be the spirit will soar. Priority number 2, prosecute the traitors and election fraudsters. All of those who knowingly participated in election fraud in 2016, 2018, 2020, 2022, and 2024 must be arrested, prosecuted, and face life in prison if found guilty. Attempting to cheat and steal an election is a serious crime that puts us all at risk of exactly the kind of tyranny and authoritarianism that we've experienced over the last 4 years. Those who carried out these crimes are not worthy of being allowed to participate in civilized society ever again. Remove them. Decentralize the federal government, give it back to the states, and we, the people, win. Jeff, I'm going to come back to point number 2 on the election anomalies in 2020 that we were discussing earlier, just the 2 of us. Priority number 3, deport the illegals and build the wall to protect the southern border. Start the mass deportations immediately. Locate and remove the 10+ million illegals who have invaded and occupied our nation. I think that's a very low number. I think the general consensus is more like 20, 30 million, although I've heard people like JJ Carroll say it's upwards of 50 million, which would mean 1 in 7 people in America is an illegal. And I have no, data to rebut any of those people. I'm just telling you what they said. So they committed violent crimes, voter fraud, insurance fraud, and displaced Americans in need, including many blacks and veterans. The illegals must go. They're welcome to come back if they apply for citizenship and are vetted and approved. But there must be no more open borders and no trafficking of anything across the border, children, weapons, drugs, etc. There goes the Democrats' campaign funding source. Boom. So those were the very astute observations from Doc Pete. He's got a pretty busy schedule ahead of him for the next few weeks, but he will make some time somewhere along the way to join us. Jeff, I want to hear your thoughts on, we looked at some numbers and they were very consistent for every election for many, many years until 2020. And now also people are saying, well, Kamala got 15 million less votes than Joe Biden supposedly got, but Donald Trump didn't get, that many more votes now than he did in 2020. Where'd the 15 million votes go? So I want to hear your thoughts first, Jeff, then your thoughts, John, and then we're going to get into our top 10 executive orders.
Well, my first guess is it was the Left Behind series, that they were taken up in some sort of miniature rapture, but can't really prove that one. Makes for a good movie, though. You've got 15 million votes, theoretically 15 million people that just don't exist anymore. And where did they go? And the answer is they were probably never there in the first place. It was with these, the electronic voting machines. Anytime there's electrons involved, you have the opportunity to make changes using those electrons. And if you can create a vote, or you double up votes, or you take a precinct where Joe Biden is winning, and you just you look at the voter turnout and you say, well, there's really only a 40-50% turnout. Let's make it 90, or let's make it 85, and then we'll make all those votes for Joe. That's not hard to do. And so people say, well, where are those humans? Well, they're registered voters. Here are the voter rolls, but they didn't actually vote. But you voted for them, in effect. They cast their vote for them. That way, the gross numbers, as far as bodies in that district versus who voted, makes sense. I think they screwed it up in some places, because you had Milwaukee, where you had 104% voter turnout. Someone explain that one to me. So there are some places where they've had problems. And prosecuting people for doing this, we just had a case, it's being investigated in Pennsylvania, where a company was dropping voter registrations at the last second up in Pennsylvania. Well, that company is in Arizona, and it's owned by, I think it's the deputy mayor of Mesa. And what's interesting about that, and the reason I like that, because it's an Arizona company doing something in Pennsylvania, that's now interstate commerce. That's now a federal issue. It's not, Pennsylvania deciding whether or not to investigate someone in Pennsylvania. When it's across state lines, it automatically becomes a federal issue. And you can have a reformed DOJ go after it.
Right. John, I want to hear your thoughts a minute, but I'm going to quickly assess this. If you think 92% of Americans voted in any election, you get off the Kool-Aid. You're absolutely crazy. John, your thoughts on
I'm gonna read something to you, and I know I've already sent this to you, Chris, but so I'm gonna read this before I actually give my thoughts. So 2004, 121 million people voted. 2008, 129 million people voted. That was the high watermark. That was when Obama activated a larger portion of the black vote, all of that stuff. 2012, he narrowly won with 226 total votes. Now, this is total votes throughout the country. 2016, 128 million total votes. 2020, 155 million votes. 2024, 129 million votes. One of those things is not like the other. It's not even close. So population increase from 2004 to 2024, that's understandable for it to be 7 million overall. We've had a population increase, whether it be by birth or just migration of illegals. That's happened. But over the last 6 election cycles, there was one that was 16 million more votes than the other. I'm about black-pilled on this, that I think they actually manufactured 16 million votes. Let's think back to 2020. You guys remember the movie that Dinesh D'Souza put out, 2,000 Mules? That was in one area, guys. I think that was Georgia, right? That he was talking about. That was one state. Extrapolate that out across the entire country. Remember the drop boxes. You remember the videos that were going on Twitter at the time, and Elon Musk didn't even own it then, of people carrying hundreds of ballots to these drop boxes. The Democrat states and even some of the Republican states were all locked down for the most part. Mail-in voting. They were mailing ballots to people that didn't even request them, that you didn't have to request. Some states were just sending them out, and then they were harvesting them. It doesn't take long to figure this out. And that is the reality, is they couldn't do it this time. There were too many eyeballs on this thing. There was too much of people suspicious. And I think, honestly, after seeing the results, Trump's vote total really, and at the end of it, he's probably going to be at around 73 to 74 million. That's pretty much in line with what he got in 2020. And the Democrats are going to be directly in line with what they got the previous 4 elections. There's another graph that's been going around that shows it in actually graphed out. And you can draw a straight line across the Democratic vote the last 4 election cycles, except for 2020. They didn't just all of a sudden tap into 17 million extra votes, guys, and then all of a sudden they lost them. That's not how the Democrats work.
Yeah.
I honestly thought that the high bar mark, I thought Trump was going to, in order to win the popular vote, I thought Trump was going to have 80 million votes. But this is honestly the biggest indictment of the fact that 2020 was stolen, is that those 16 million votes just vanished. It's a Christmas miracle.
There will be people who go to jail for that.
And deservedly so.
And they tried to pull some stunts again in this election, but thankfully we had the right people deployed and the right infrastructure and SOPs, et cetera, et cetera. So the first call to the 800 number for True the Vote was at 6 a.m. in Philadelphia, where GOP election observers were being denied access to the precincts. So they called the True the Vote 1-800 number. In the blink of an eye, they had 3 attorneys on site and then reaching out to county officials saying, we're going to sue your ass off if you don't fix this right away. The precincts opened at 7 a.m. and by 7:05 a.m., the observers were allowed to enter. So they were trying to pull it off there, and that's one of many examples.
And they went to a judge, didn't they?
Yeah.
And the judge basically said, I'm going to give them instant injunctive, and you're not going to be able to do this anyways, and you're going to get sued on the tail end of this.
Correct. So here's what's crazy. The last phone call of the day was also Philadelphia, because a bunch of box trucks with California tags on them showed up just past midnight with boxes and boxes of votes. And they were all bullshit votes. And when they opened them up, by the way, they had Harris walls filled in, but nothing down ballot at all. So just all complete bullshit and baloney. So I think John must be having a technical issue there. I'm sure he'll be right back. So Jeff, let's dive into the top 10 executive orders that we feel Trump should address ASAP on day number 1. And the very first one is pardon all nonviolent January 6 offenders. And these are not in a specific order, by the way. These are just what we felt the top 10 was. Hundreds of people have been prosecuted and jailed for nonviolent offenses related to the Capitol riot. I don't even know if I call it a riot. January 6, 2021. Often they simply walked onto the Capitol grounds or through doors opened by Capitol Police. They were smeared in the media and tried in a hostile jurisdiction and often lacked access to exculpatory evidence. Trump should immediately pardon all 9 nonviolent defendants, including himself. So check this out. I mentioned this last night when we had Sean and Justin and Bruce on. I mentioned Sarah's name, Sarah Maccabee. So if you want to talk exculpatory evidence being forbidden, Sarah's the one that I mentioned to y'all last night. And if we've got new people, I'll just give you the Cliff Notes version. Her husband was a sheriff's deputy. Her husband was at J6. They're from Kentucky. He shielded a cop who had been pushed down and was essentially being trampled. There are 4 videos. I've seen them all. Sarah has them that show the cop thanking Colton for essentially saving him from grievous, wounds, injury. And then not too long after that, a lady had a heart attack. Colton administered CPR. She didn't survive. When the paramedics were there, they said, look, man, she was too far gone, too much heart damage. August 21st, 2021, the feds show up at their front door and they arrest them on 6 counts of felony assault. And they put them in the gulag, a part of Washington, D.C.'s jail that had been closed for eons, all kinds of water intrusion, black mold, et cetera, et cetera. And then they threw him in the general population. And being a cop, he got assaulted multiple times. He's now in his 21st penal institution because they keep throwing him in general population. When he was tried, the judge specifically said that those 6 videos, so 4 regarding the cop and 2 regarding the lady who died, were not going to be allowed into evidence. And that is just complete bullshit. So there's Colton right there. Him and Sarah, high school sweethearts. They're both in their late 20s, early 30s now. And he is still sitting in jail. The latest prison, that they sent him to is in Minnesota. SarahMaccabee.us if you're interested in helping them. I mentioned last night that every time I mention Sarah and Colton's story, my inbox fills up. And sure enough, that's what happened today. So there's a prime example of what we're saying with regards to pardoning J6 people who've had a massive injustice done to them. Jeff, will turn it over to you for thoughts on pardoning all nonviolent J6 offenders.
Well, absolutely. Because if you compare the J6 protest riots, whatever you want to call it, to the Black Lives Matter protest riots, there were more people hurt, more people killed, more damage done by Black Lives Matter. None of them got sentences like this. None of them. We have people who were given 2 years in federal prison for misdemeanor trespassing. I mean, think about that. Misdemeanor trespassing. That's like, I told him to get off my lawn. He didn't get off my lawn fast enough. We had old people with bad knees who sat down, on benches in the Capitol building who got 3 years in jail. You don't have an insurrection with no weapons, and you don't have a riot where people say behind the velvet ropes. So this is obviously, it's a complete Democrat political put up, and it needs to be corrected by just stroke of the pen, pardon them all.
But what about these 6 law enforcement officers who were murdered on January 6th, according to Joe Biden? And he went to all 6 of their funerals, by the way.
Yeah, none of them were. The only one who died on January 6th, there was the lady who had the heart attack.
Yep.
There was Ashley Babbitt. And I think there were others that had, but they were not related to anything else. They were old people who, had strokes and stuff like that. The only one who died a violent death was Ashley Babbitt.
Correct.
No police officers were killed. Yes, there were some assaulted, and people who assaulted them should pay for that, but they should get what everybody else got. If someone from a Black Lives Matter protest hit a cop with a bottle and got 60 days in jail, that's what the J6ers should get. They shouldn't get 10 years because that's bullshit.
And the vast majority of people at J6 were not violent, but
no.
It's specifically why we said to pardon the non-violent, J6ers who got caught up in this persecution. All right. Executive order number 2, and this one's a no-brainer. and I'm sure it's going to happen, reinstate the Remain in Mexico policy. Under President Trump, the U.S. adopted the policy consistent with international law that asylum seekers must claim refuge in the first safe country that they enter, which in this case would be Mexico. Those who wish to file asylum claims when the border reopens them will not be allowed to enter the U.S. and remain pending their court date, but rather will be required to remain in Mexico until that date arrives. And here's an article from a couple of years ago, and I brought it up because it's from a couple of years ago. So Senator Marsha Blackburn, Tennessee, was, imploring the Biden admin and Mayorkas to reinstate Title 42, which is the other nomenclature for the Remain in Mexico policy. And this one here is actually 2023. I have another one pulled up. It's 2021. This has been going on during the entire Biden admin. And I even heard some rumblings at one point that Biden was going to reinstate it, but I never did see anything to that effect. So Remain in Mexico, this has a direct impact on you in Arizona, Jeff. What are your thoughts?
Well, yeah, absolutely, it should. But more than that, what we need to do is say, if someone comes up to the border and says, I want to seek asylum, okay, great. Show us your ID. Where are you from? Or I'm from Venezuela. You're not eligible. Why? Because, like you said, first safe haven. Well, if you're from Venezuela, the first safe haven is probably going to be Colombia. And
Right.
even if it's not, it's going to be then Panama. And then, as you move your way up, all those states are not Venezuela. So by the time you get here, you've already passed 6 potential asylum locations. So you don't get asylum isn't vacation where you say, well, I want to go to Aruba this time and I want to go to Grand Cayman the next. No, if you're in fear of your life, it's the first safe place you get to. We're not it. The only ones who should be declaring asylum in the United States are Mexicans and Canadians, unless somebody gets off an international flight. And if they land at JFK on a flight from Paris and they're an Afghan, their asylum location at the very least was Paris, and that's where you need to stay. And if Venezuela won't take these guys back when we deport them, we need to just dump them back into Mexico and say, they entered your country, you must have let them because you didn't kick them out. So they're yours. You own them. We don't want them.
Yeah, I love it. So just a short little tangent here. We've had Brad Wozny on a few times. He's really good friends with General Valley. He's Canadian. He married an American girl here. They lived in Colorado for years, and they kicked him out of the country over something to do with the COVID stuff. I don't recall all the details. It doesn't matter. But he sent out a very exhaustive email today to the general, myself, and a handful of other people, where there's some treaty that goes back way, way back that essentially says that Canada is owned by the United States. And I don't know how much, validity there is to it, but it's an interesting concept. And I'm actually going to reach out to Brad and ask him to come on and explain it. He made a pretty interesting argument on it. So anyway, we'll get back to our top executive order. So number 3, this isn't really an executive order, but it's one of the top 3 things, or top 10 things, pardon me, that we felt that Trump should address as soon as possible when he gets back in office. And it is to convene a summit with Russia and Ukraine for peace talks. So up until now, Biden has famously declared diplomacy is back. He has avoided pretty much every diplomatic, initiative out there. And a big part of it is because he's part of the military industrial complex. And we've got these companies that are making tons of money, which is why they love to drag us into one war after another. So, and we've poured billions into it. I've heard some people say, Jeff, it's actually closer to $1 trillion that we've pumped into Ukraine over this war. Yeah. So they both, Zelensky and Putin, have agreed that they would like to see things end. I almost think that Zelensky's probably sitting there thinking, I can't wait for Donald Trump to come back in because we're going to lose this war spectacularly if we don't get this monkey off our back. So a couple quick articles to show before you comment, and one of them's kind of humorous in a way. So this was a story from last year, and they quote Colonel Douglas McGregor, who anybody who knows him, he's very outspoken. He's a true patriot. Pardon me. We have sent almost all of our war stocks, weapon systems, and ammunition to Ukraine. We don't have a great deal left. The war in Ukraine is lost. Make peace, you fools. And here's where I find a little bit of comedic element here. RT, you know, this is Russian news, right? Owned by the Russian government. And they quote Donald Trump when Donald Trump made a comment that we were running out of ammunition, like 155 millimeter howitzer shells, etc. And the Russians quote that in here. And when you do searches on it and you get like an American perspective narrative, meaning, well, pardon me, narrative like that aligns with Google and everybody else, they basically say that they fact checked it and Trump was wrong, blah, blah, blah. And we know that's just not the case. So, Jeff, your thoughts on putting an end to the conflict, Ukraine, Russia?
Yeah, and like anything, no one's going to be happy with the final deal. Both are going to have to give up stuff. And what people don't understand in history, and don't think I'm some sort of Russian lover, I am not, believe me, I think Putin is a douchebag. But historically, this all started over Crimea. And historically, yeah, Crimea was part of the Ukraine, but everybody who lived there was Russian because Crimea had been Russian since Peter the Great, I think, who took it from the Tatars. And it only became Ukrainian in the 1950s when Nikita Khrushchev, in celebrating the joining of the Kievan Empire with the Russian Empire, when they kind of merged back in the day for the first time, he kind of handed it over to Crimea. But handed it over to Ukraine. But it was kind of a symbolic thing more than a physical thing because Russia and Ukraine were all part of the Soviet Union at that time. So that would be like, Arkansas giving, a chunk to, Missouri. You don't think it's really going to make a difference. It's not going anywhere. Same people, same government, same everything. So Crimea has traditionally not been Ukrainian. It has been Russian for hundreds of years. And then the Russians go, you know what, we kind of want it back. Khrushchev was an idiot when he gave it to you, so we want it back. That's kind of what started the whole thing. And what really started was the fact they knew they could get away with it because Obama wasn't going to do anything, and they didn't. So we need to put that aside and then look at the Eastern Ukraine, which is what they're fighting over, and say, okay, we're going to have to do something and no one's going to be happy with it, but it's better than killing another 500,000 people. Put your egos aside. Let's come to a conclusion.
So our good friend Roger here, he's one of our very loyal followers from Texas, very active in the Signal chat as well. We need to stop decommissioning ships until we get this figured out. Well, on that topic, here's a study that tells you how dire that is. A leaked slide U.S. Navy briefing reveals that China's shipbuilding capacity is 232 times greater than the United States. I mean, that is a massive delta. And to be quite frank, one of the biggest reasons why we won World War II is industrial capacity. And you and I have discussed this before, right? Typewriter factories became gun factories. The big three built Jeeps and other vehicles for the Army, and we don't have that industrial capacity anymore, and that's a problem. Now, on the upside, and I'm not an expert in shipbuilding or anything like that, but my understanding is that all of the intellectual property related to the piece of equipment that slingshots the planes off of
electromagnetic launcher.
That's an electromagnetic launcher. Thank you. That's been very closely guarded. So the Chinese have 3 aircraft carriers. The first one was a Russian, basically cargo ship that they converted into an aircraft carrier, and it's really small. And here's the crazy thing. It's the only aircraft carrier that they have where the hull hasn't split in half. So then they've got an aircraft carrier that kind of sort of looks like one of ours that doesn't have the launcher. And then the most recent one, it looks like remember ABC, Wide World of Sports, when we grew up?
Ski jump, yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of people use those. The British use that.
Have you seen Have you seen the videos though of their ripoff of our F-35? They call it J-35, going down the ship up and a boop straight in the water. There's videos out there that show it. They've also tried to conceal the decks because, of course, our satellite imagery is very high resolution. But both the second and third aircraft carrier have massive cracks in the deck on top because the ships have literally done this. So thank God we've done a good job of protecting the IP around that. I did mention before our buddy Steve from Anything Outdoors with Steve, his partner in crime on their YouTube channel. He's been a global salesman in the tech industry for many, many years. And he was in China 20 years ago. And the Chinese had the blueprints for the F-35 on this table, and they didn't even convert it from English to either of the Chinese languages. And so he very quietly took pictures of it. When he flew back home, he went straight to the FBI and said, I need to show you all this. This is happening in China. They've got our blueprints to the F-35 and everything. And they said, that's none of your concern. We have nothing to discuss. Like this evil that's infested our country goes back, Lord knows how many years. But by the way, I got a text message from John. They lost power. Oh. So we're a first world country with a third world power grid. And another thing I mentioned at some point in the past week or so, that our good friend Don Mann hasn't flown the American flag for quite a long time because, and this is for those of you who don't know Don Mann, if you go to usfrogman.com, 2 N's on the end of man, him and Jeff have written a couple books together, SEAL Teams 1, 2, and 6. Guy's incredible. So he stopped flying the American flag a few years back. He's so disgusted with the Biden admin. And he texted me today to say he feels like a weight's been lifted off his shoulders. And he's with Tara right now, his fiance. But he said as soon as he gets home, he's putting the American flag back up again. So just wanted to briefly share that before we move on to number 4. So the 4th executive order on our list is to issue immediate presidential pardons of pro-life activists who've been pursued by the Biden DOJ. So the Biden Department of Justice has pursued draconian sentences for peaceful protesters who dared to pray in abortion clinics or who have been confronted by violent pro-choice protesters. Meanwhile, the DOJ has ignored attacks on pregnancy centers. Those convicted under anti-life statutes will have their convictions pardoned and or their sentences commuted immediately. And I have one of many egregious examples. So elderly pro-life activist 75 sentenced to prison after abortion clinic demonstration. There are some additional videos of her out there. She did nothing but stand there minding her own peace, with her sign across the road. And now she's in jail. I guess we're doing a little bit better than the British, though. Jeff, did you catch that, in Great Britain now, if you say anything that could even be remotely considered anti-invader, migrants, that you get put in jail. They've let 3,000 criminals go, like hardened criminals in Great Britain, to make room for people who made, social media posts that offended somebody's weak feelings. Did you see the latest on this?
It's worse than that. There was a woman who was convicted and put in prison for
thinking,
silently praying.
Bingo.
Within a block of an abortion clinic.
And that's where I was going.
And my thing is, like, how can you convict her of something you think she was thinking? And even if she was thinking it, so what? But yeah.
I mean, if that's not
thinking,
if that's not Orwellian wrongthink, I don't know what is. They put her in jail for saying a prayer in her head without audibly voicing a single word. So
because she didn't want them killing babies. Now, how sick is that? You're just thinking that we shouldn't be killing babies, so we're going to put you in prison.
Well, again, wrong think, right?
Yeah.
So any additional thoughts that you have on the abortion stuff?
Yeah, well, it needs to be done. And on a side note, Britain is lost. Britain has fallen.
I agree. It would take an an incredible effort that I don't believe that their government has the wherewithal to do, because they're under enemy control, just like our government's been under enemy control, which is why they fought so hard to keep Trump out of office. All right, number 5, this one should go over well with our audience because we've discussed this at length, and that is to remove diversity, equity, and inclusion from federal hiring and promotion. DEI has become a tool for discrimination in the workplace and has caused large organizations, public and private, to become less productive and more obsessed with racial ideology. The Trump administration will remove DEI and restore compliance with the Civil Rights Act and other policies that seek out qualified candidates from disadvantaged backgrounds on a fair basis. So taking us back to merit-based as opposed to, this divisiveness that the Democrats and the globalists love to foist upon us.
There's go far enough, though. You need to get rid of all DEI training, not just hiring and everything, but forcing people to sit through these bullshit lectures where you're white, you have toxic whiteness, and you've got to cleanse that from your body. That doesn't have anything to do with hiring necessarily, but all those programs just need to be flushed down the toilet. If it doesn't help, if it doesn't apply to the core mission of the organization, military, kill people and break things, if it doesn't further that mission, don't waste time and money on it. Period.
Yeah. So if you search on this, and just quick note for any of our new followers, Google's a horrible search engine. The results are highly curated to push these, globalist narratives. DuckDuckGo was doing okay for a while. Then they got caught in the DEI stuff. A very accomplished coder sent in a resume a couple years back, didn't even get a response to it. He turned around and changed his identity to a black girl, sent it in, immediately got a response saying that they wanted to hire him because they thought he was, a different race. And how soon could he start? And then he blew the whole thing out just to show how bad it was. So at the end of the day, a good litmus test is that if you go to a search engine and you ask it if, men can get pregnant and it says yes, it's probably not a good source of information. Myself, my preferred search engines are Yandex, Yandex.com, and search.brave.com. So I don't know if you have anything else to add on DEI. I mean, from my perspective, Jeff, quick story on why I went the powerlifting route instead of bodybuilding all these years, right? Saturday, a Labor Day weekend, 1982, my buddy's parents piled us into an old Delta 98, big old boat of a car. And it was an all-night drive-in theater. We didn't stay all night, but Rambo First Blood was playing. And I was a 125-pound freshman, and I said to my buddies, I'm going to look like Sylvester Stallone. And they said, yeah, sure you are. So the Tuesday after Labor Day, 1982, I started training. The following August, I went into football camp at 210 pounds. And so we're going back 42 years of training. And at the end of the day, the reason I went that route, and you keep in mind, my home gym is Metroflex Arlington, owned by my good friend Brian Dobson, who's the man who made Ronnie Coleman 8 times Mr. Olympia. You'll see me in a bunch of his old training videos. And the problem with bodybuilding, besides the dirty politics, is it's very subjective. It's somebody's opinion. It's like a beauty pageant. Whereas powerlifting, if you push more weight than I push, that's very objective. You win. And that's why I went that route, even though when I competed under 200 pounds, like I competed 181, 198, 220, 242, 275. At 198, I would carry about 7-8% body fat. At 181, I would carry less than 4% body fat, and measured multiple times in different ways. It's highly unusual for a power lifter to be that shredded. But it was always, for me, it was this battle between, I want to be the strongest guy in the room pound for pound, but I want to look like Sylvester Stallone. So that was, and here we are all these years later, and I'm still a huge fan of.
You wanted to have your cake and eat it too.
I did. I mean, the downside to it is when you drop to that low of body fat levels, you start blowing stuff out, like, joints and torn pecs and all kinds of good stuff. But all right, moving on to executive order number 6 on our list. Remove restrictions on domestic energy production. The new administration will adopt a completely new policy on energy. By expanding domestic energy production, the second Trump administration can change expectations about future oil and gas prices and increase domestic supplies. That in turn can have the effect of lowering fuel prices, which are a major driver of inflationary pressures, since fuel costs affect every link in the supply chain. And what I want to add to that, and we've discussed this previously, when the government says this is the core inflation rate, the core inflation rate doesn't include food, fuel, and housing. So those are the three things that eat up people's paychecks more than anything else. So then you go get what's called the CPI, the Consumer Price Index. However, great example is maybe 4 or 5 months ago, the wholesale price of coffee beans jumped 29%. Coffee has been in the CPI, the Consumer Price Index, for many, many decades. They took it out because it was significant enough that it skewed the numbers. All a bunch of smoke and mirrors bullshit. But
if you want a skinny population, quit weighing fat people.
There you go. So I love this. I mean, this is going back, I believe, to 2021. Yeah, 3 years ago, where Manchin from West Virginia, was telling Biden, you need to open up the Keystone XL again, because of course, with a stroke of his pen on Inauguration Day, he smoked that project, because Obama was vehemently against it. I think this one's pretty much a no-brainer. And, I bet you right now that the company that owns Keystone, if I'm not mistaken, it's a company out of Calgary, Alberta, Canada. They're probably overjoyed, in Canada, those guys at least, that Trump is coming back in office. So what are your thoughts on opening up our oil reserves? And clarify one thing for me. I have read multiple places, but unable to really verify it, that we have more significant oil and gas reserves than any other country in the world. Is that accurate in your opinion?
The country with the most proven reserves, believe it or not, is actually Venezuela.
Okay.
But those are very hard to produce because it's very heavy, thick. It's almost like a tar, and it's very high in sulfur, so it's a pain in the ass to refine, which is why they don't get top dollar for their petroleum on the market. They have to sell it at a discount because refiners usually have to blend it with lighter crude just so they can pump it. So take that into account. But yeah, we have a boatload of resources here. There's tons in Alaska that they've been locking up for years. We still have it in the Gulf. They've kind of banned offshore production in California and off the East Coast, but there's oil out there. They just won't let us get it. But the shale is the big thing. If you drive through West Texas, through the Permian Basin, Midland, Odessa, they're still pumping oil like crazy. And there's another shale formation. I can't remember the name of it. Well, there's the Eagle Ford in South Texas, but there's another shale formation that runs kind of from Texas across Louisiana into Mississippi, which is largely untapped right now. And they think that one has 10 billion barrels, I think I heard.
Wow.
So there's oil out there. I mean, almost every state in the union has oil. Oil is not rare. You just got to be willing to get it out of the ground. Another thing we need to look at, to be honest, is coal. We have more coal than anybody. We have clean coal out west, especially in Wyoming, that is great for power plants. And it's constant, steady stuff. You don't have to worry about the wind not blowing or the sun not shining. Coal is a good thing. They've got scrubbers and stuff on it now. It's the reason you don't hear about acid rain anymore. It's because they have NOx and SOx scrubbers that pulls that stuff out. They take that material and then they end up using it in other industrial processes. But one thing we have to do is we have to bring the price of oil down, and then we have to refill the strategic oil reserve, because Clinton has drained it to the lowest. Biden has drained it to the lowest level it's been in probably 20 or 30 years. And that's our emergency supply, that if shit hits the fan and there's World War III, that's what's supposed to be keeping us going. And Biden sold it off to keep prices low for the 2022 election.
Yeah, but it didn't. I mean, it was all smoke and mirrors. It's such a small amount relative to what we go through on a daily basis. I don't remember the exact numbers. But what he sold off,
millions of barrels of oil.
Yeah, what he sold off wasn't enough to power the entire country for a very short period of time. It was a number of weeks or months. It wasn't a long period of time. It was a it was more for theater is what I read on it. But
Well, it kept prices down. It was to keep the gas prices down.
Yeah, I get the basic economics behind it, but I think a lot of it was smoke and mirrors based on the fact that what he took out of the strategic reserves, the country would burn through pretty darn quickly. But moving on to number 7 for executive orders that we would like to see happen on Trump's first day back in office or shortly thereafter. Declare an intention to veto budgets that are not moving toward balance. The congressional spending spree must stop. Although the spending power belongs to Congress, not to the president, the president can veto spending bills. President Trump should compel Congress to move toward balanced budgets by using his veto pen to reject congressional spending that does not put the U.S. on track to return to the balanced budgets of the 1990s. And so I have an article pulled up here from The Hill. They're typically pretty left wing, and even they're putting this out there. This is from September 16th of this year, that our interest payments on the U.S. debt had now topped $1 trillion. And if you go to some conservatives, they'll say it's even higher than that. So based on their calculation, that's 20% of the federal government's revenues. I've seen other people state that it's as high as 26% of the $5 trillion a year that our federal government brings in. Either way, the interest is chewing up so much money that there's not a lot left for the things that matter. And this doesn't end well, staying on this path. So your thoughts on Trump using his veto powers to basically nuke unbalanced budgets?
He absolutely needs to do this. We're basically bankrupting our children and our grandchildren and our great-grandchildren because we're spending money like drunken sailors, which is an insult to drunken sailors. I think one of the biggest problems, besides stupid stuff like the Inflation Reduction Act, which pumped almost $2 trillion into an overheated economy and causing more inflation, is the continuing resolution. Congress is full of lazy people. They have not passed a real budget in decades. And by that, I mean, you pick the Department of Agriculture, for example, and you say, what a continuing resolution does is we're going to take last year's spending, we're going to add the rate of inflation and then spend that next year. So nothing ever goes away. They need to have a real budget where they look at every line item in that budget for agriculture and say, do we need this, yes or no? And if the answer is no, get rid of it. But they never do that because that requires work and they're all too damn lazy to do it. So what Trump needs to do is say, I will not be signing continuing resolutions. Either you give me a real budget for the Department of Education or the Department of Energy or whoever, or I'll close it down. And some department of Education just needs to go away. They just need to nuke it all together. We have a Department of Education that educates no one, costs us about 40 some odd billion dollars a year, maybe more. We have a Department of Energy that produces no energy. We have a Department of Agriculture that grows no food. They pay farmers not to grow food. The only part of agriculture we should be keeping is food safety. The USDA, the test to make sure the meat you buy is not going to make you sick. Department of Housing and Urban Development. They don't develop urban areas and they don't build housing. Why are they there? Nuke it. Get rid of it. There are just so many things that are an anathema. They don't do what they're supposed to do, and we never get rid of them. And you need to say, what's their core mission? Are they accomplishing it? If not, nuke them and just start over.
I couldn't agree more. We've got 3 more to round out the top 10. And without letting the cat completely out of the bag, we actually have some stuff relative to RFK. And one of them relates to the Federal Drug Administration or Food and Drug Administration, pardon me, the FDA. So we'll be there in a minute after we cover the last 3 executive orders. So number 8. End electric vehicle mandates and emission standards that eliminate gas-powered cars. The Biden administration has imposed electrical vehicle mandates and emissions targets that are so strict They all but ensure the automakers will no longer be able to produce gas-powered cars. Yet consumers are rejecting electric vehicles. The Trump administration will cancel these mandates. Tesla has shown they are not necessary to drive consumer interest. So we've got a note on this. He's actually been saying this for quite a while now, so this isn't really anything new. I'm pretty sure that he's going to go through with it, but his argument is, I'm going to end the EV mandate and we're going to save the big three, in particular, American auto manufacturers. And he's also on this topic going to impose some pretty significant tariffs on foreign vehicles, tariffs above and beyond what we have right now, to spur more people on to buy American-made stuff, which I'm not sure how he's going to deal with the assembled in America versus built in America, because there's a big difference between the two. But what are your thoughts on the electric vehicle stuff, Jeff?
Well, I don't like mandates of any kind. I don't like vaccine mandates. I don't like EV mandates. I don't like, you can't have natural gas mandates. I'm all for people making their own decisions. Now, there's time and place for EVs, and if you live in a city where it's crowded and it's a pain in the ass, but you can drive your EV, plug and charge it up in your garage, great. If that's what you want, go for it. You should have that right, but you should not force people to buy a product they don't want and they don't need. EVs are not right for everyone, just like gasoline cars are not right for everyone. This makes no more sense than to require everybody in America has to buy a Ford F-450 Super Duty turbo diesel truck. And people are going to say, but it won't even fit in my garage. Well, that's too bad, by God, because we think you should have to drive one. It's no different with the EVs. Let people buy it. Let people do what they want to do. Like, it's like a mandate for a vaccine. You want to take the vaccine, take it. If you don't, you don't. Okay, it's your business. It's your body. It's your dollars. You should be able to spend it the way you want to. And I don't like the government telling people they have to do anything. It's just the little L libertarian in me.
And I don't disagree there. I'm a truck guy, and all of the electric trucks are just absolute garbage.
Yeah.
Just look up Ford Lightning and the problems that they've had with that piece of junk. But I will say, just in response to Dibs here, that may be the case with cars, but when it comes to full-size trucks, there's no foreign truck out there that's a diesel 4x4, 3/4 ton or 1 ton that compares to our trucks here. And, I'm pretty firm in that. The car stuff, I don't know. I'm not into that stuff. I'm a truck guy, but nobody builds a full-size truck that's got massive potential. If you do a delete on the computer in these new diesels and you get rid of all the crap that you have to run on them, the amount of horsepower that you pick up is astronomical. I may know a thing or two on that subject, and that's another story. All right, 2 more executive.
I was going to say, drive to the oil patch of West Texas. They're all great big diesel trucks because they use them to haul crap.
Exactly.
You can't do that with an electric.
No, you can't even do it with most gas trucks because the transmissions, everything, nothing will last, right? Okay, moving on from that, though. Number 9 for our initial top 10 executive orders from Trump. And this is a really interesting one. And you certainly know more on this subject than I do, but it's a really interesting concept. Start a national sovereign wealth fund, SWF they're called, that includes cryptocurrency. President Trump, should propose a rainy day fund within the Treasury into which the U.S. will deposit a mix of dollars, Bitcoin, and cryptocurrencies. That rainy day fund can act as a sovereign wealth investment fund whose assets, including the cryptocurrencies, as Congress may issue to service the debt, can offset the nation's liabilities. Such a fund should have a politically independent board. So let me bring that up, and I'll let you explain the concept behind an SWF, Jeff.
Yeah, sovereign wealth funds, a lot of countries have, a lot of the oil countries have them. Kuwait had a really big one, and then when Iraq invaded Kuwait and basically trashed the country, the way they were able to just rebuild is because they could tap into their sovereign wealth fund, which was billions upon billions and billions of dollars. Saudi Arabia has it as well. These are countries with relatively small populations. They have an excess of natural resources that give them a lot of money. And this is what, and like oil fluctuates. Some years high, some years low. But when it's high, you take the excess money and you put it into your sovereign wealth fund, and it's a piggy bank. The problem we're going to have is we have so much freaking debt. We have to address that issue first. If you're putting a boatload of money into a sovereign wealth fund while you still have $35 trillion in national debt, it's like taking money on your credit card and buying a stock. Okay, you're hoping to God the stock goes up more than the interest on the credit card. It's better to do that when you have excess funds. Now, if we can get to the point where we balance our budget, that doesn't necessarily mean paying off the debt, but you balance the budget to where your receipts coming in versus going out every year, you're at least breaking even or ahead. And in that receipts going out is service on the debt. So if you have an excess of that, you can either buy back your high interest debt and get rid of it, or invest that into a sovereign wealth fund that will, in theory, earn more money than the debt it would otherwise replace. But if you're still piling trillions into your national debt every year, I don't think it makes a lot of sense to have a sovereign wealth fund. It's like I'm taking money off my credit card and putting it in my checking account or my savings account. Not a good long-term plan.
Right. Great explanation. I appreciate that, Jeff. And let's move on to the next one here. So we're down to number 10 for executive orders. And this is an interesting one because when I first read the results on this, and this is not tonight, this is going back a number of years ago, I went and did this test online just to see what would happen. And I was astonished how easy it was. And then the numbers really threw me off. So number 10, require all executive department employees to pass the basic citizenship test. The numbers on this are pretty, they will floor you. Too many people working for the federal government do not have an elementary knowledge of the Constitution or the country's history. All executive department employees, including political appointees, should have to pass the same citizenship test that we require immigrants to take. If they fail, they should not be allowed to take posts in the federal government until they pass it. So this is where it gets interesting. I've seen numbers slightly worse, slightly better than this, but only 1 in 3 Americans would pass the citizenship test. So we've got people, I'm not talking illegal invaders, those sort of people, but we've got people who come into the country that have no problems passing this. And yet 1 in 3 Americans can't pass it. That's pretty sad. This is Civics 101 stuff. Here's a really ironic twist to this is Donald Trump had proposed a much more comprehensive test for immigrants to take. And that took the number from 1 in 3 Americans passing the citizenship test down to 2%. And I can't say that I ever did see the questions that were on his version, but you can take the current one that's been around forever. You can take it online for free, multiple places. It's really not that hard. And it's kind of embarrassing that 1/3 of our citizens can't pass it. So your thoughts on requiring federal employees to have a higher level of civics knowledge?
Well, it's not even a higher level. It's a basic level.
Well, higher than where they are right now.
Oh, yeah, that's not saying a lot because we don't teach civics in this country anymore. How many people, especially not to pick on the young people, how many young people say we're a democracy? Right. We are not a democracy. We've never been a democracy.
That's right.
They considered that back in when they're drawing up the Constitution and went, no, because that's mob rules. But another thing we need to do is any congressman elected who's going to be on a committee like finance committee or something like that has to have passed economics 101, so they understand the concept of supply and demand, that that if you give money to person A, it doesn't mean you have to take it from person B, that sometimes you can grow the economy. These people have no idea, and just like they have no idea about physics. People, I've got this perpetual motion machine. No, you don't. I guarantee you don't, because there's basic rules of physics, and physics is a bitch. It It's not very compromising. So, yeah, we have elected officials who don't understand the Constitution they swear to uphold. And if you haven't read the Constitution, you have no idea about the Constitution. People say our rights are given to us by the Constitution. No, they're not. Our rights are given to us by God. The Constitution limits the government's functions and duties and authorities, not ours.
Yeah.
And people do, that's the most basic thing. And how many government employees actually know that? And I'd say it's probably 1 in 100.
Yeah, no kidding. Just quickly to address Liberty Seeker here. Trump did not lock down the country. He deferred to the states. And the states that were run by Democrats are the ones who locked down the country. So that's fake news that you're injecting into the conversation there. All right. So we've covered our top 10 executive orders we'd like to see Trump cover immediately out of the gate. However, as I mentioned, we have a bonus. So we have the top 9 things that RFK Jr. is going to do. We didn't come up with these 9 things. These 9 things come from RFK, but they're really very encouraging things. But before that, I want to pull this tweet up of his X post here. So the FDA's war on public health is about to end. This includes its aggressive suppression of psychedelics, peptides, stem cells, raw milk, hyperbaric therapies, chelating compounds. I can't say the next word or the next word. One starts with an I, one starts with an H. As soon as I verbally say that, this video will get smacked down by the YouTube censors, the AI YouTube censors. Vitamins, clean food, sunshine, exercise, nutraceuticals, and anything else that advances human health and can't be patented by pharma. If you work for the FDA and are part of this corrupt system, I have 2 messages for you. Preserve your records and pack your bags. Keep it in mind that RFK Jr. is a very accomplished attorney, and he knows what he speaks of. We frequently say follow the money and you'll find out what's going on. 75% of the FDA's budget comes from contributions made on behalf of big pharma and food companies. And it's why he made an example. He says, Fruit Loops, garbage, sugar stuff, right? The list of ingredients in Fruit Loops in America is a mile long, but you cross the border into Canada or go anywhere else in the world, and there's 3 or 4 ingredients. There's been so much poisonous crap that's been inserted into processed food. It's no wonder. I'm going to mention it again just because it's so germane to this. Last Saturday at Sam's Club, I counted 1/6 of the store, multiplied out by 6, guesstimated that there were approximately 1,000 people in the building. And I counted precisely 6 people that I would be willing to go to war with. The rest were either way overweight, they were skinny fat, whatever the case may be. We went from there to Whole Foods. The number was 0. We went from Whole Foods to Aldi. The number was 0. And I said to my wife, boy, howdy, are we in trouble? If we have to go to war with boots on the ground, we are in deep, deep trouble. And this all stems from, I'm going to go off on a quick little tangent here because I haven't actually gone down this one before with our audience. Those of us who are old enough to remember in the 1980s, not just the FDA, but the government in general had this war on fat. You got to take fat out of everything. Everything's got to be low fat. And when you take fat out of food, it tastes like shit. And the whole reason that they wanted the fat out of the food was because to make it taste good, they put sugar back in the food. Sugar is processed the exact same way as cocaine. It lights up the cerebral cortex exactly the same way as cocaine. It is super, super addictive. If you saw a visual representation of the amount of sugar that an average American eats per year, you would be absolutely gobsmacked. And prior to this change of this war on fat, the amount of sugar that Americans consumed in a year was absolutely minuscule. So the FDA is crooked as a dog's hind leg, and it's high time that we fix some of this stuff and get the country back on track. So with that being said, here are the 9 things that RFK has very vocally committed to doing. So abolish all mandates for the V word. I'm going to be careful when I say that because, again, the AI loves to nail you. And I may say it in one context, but it interprets it in another. It's happened to us before. We've had videos pulled simply because we mentioned one word in a context that even had nothing to do with COVID or anything like that. Repeal 1986, so-and-so immunity law, ban fluoridization, everywhere, reorganize FDA, FTC, and CDC, ban toxic ingredients in food, recognize the injuries and death caused by, we're back to that V word again, ban GMO foods and toxic pesticides, allow natural remedies to flourish, and recognize that V word, once again, in many instances and studies, causes autism. So, Jeff, without saying the V word at all,
Yeah, those bad words.
let me just quickly explain that. Dr. Michael Fabian, very close friend of mine, former head of surgery at Halifax here. It's the big hospital beside the Speedway in Daytona. He reviewed a Jace medical kit for us 2.5, 3 years ago. And he commented that when you do the onboarding process, so this is an emergency kit that's got Z packs and all that kind of stuff in it. He said, if you're planning on going out of the country, make sure you check that box, because when you check that box and the submission goes to the doctor, they're going to include some additional things in your little kit in case you drink any waterborne viruses like Giardia, which is absolutely horrible. And the number one way to treat that is a product that they wanted to make fun of, and they said it was for horses or something, when in reality it's been, at that point in time, consumed by over 15 billion doses had been consumed at that point in time, because in Africa they don't have clean water. The vast majority of people in Africa take this particular drug every day. The video didn't even get published. It got uploaded, and 30 minutes later I got an email saying that the video had been taken down because of misinformation. So I mean, that's beside the point. So comments on RFK's initiatives, Jeff. Sorry to cut you off there. Just want to get that.
I'm a little libertarian. I think you should be able to take what you want to take and not take what you don't want to take. So I don't like mandates. I don't like being told what to do, and most people don't, but the government loves telling you what to do. I don't think there should be mandates. But again, if you pick one, polio, you decide not to take it. Okay, that's your choice. You don't want to give it to your kids, that's your choice. But if your kid gets polio, that's all on you, and you can't sue anybody for it, because you made that decision. Fluoridation, same kind of thing. I don't have fluoride in my water here. We've checked; they don't fluoridate our water. It comes deep underground. And the reason fluoride was put in water was to prevent cavities, and fluoride is effective at that. But when you put it in the water, it goes everywhere. I mean, you don't. If you want fluoride for your teeth, go buy Act. Go buy the fluoride stuff, the rinse, put it in your mouth, rinse it around, spit it out. But you shouldn't be ingesting that. And when you buy it from Act, which is a Johnson & Johnson product, it says, do not drink. So even they realize, okay, it may not be good for your kidneys. It may not be good for some other organs or sort of thing. It's great for your teeth. So you just give it to expose it to your teeth and nothing else. But when you put it in the water, every time you take a sip of water, you're taking fluoride. And I don't think they know all the long-term health effects of it. I'm all with that. Yeah, because if you want to use it, you can still use it. You just buy it and use it yourself. The FDA, it needs to be completely reorganized. It gets a huge chunk of its budget from pharma companies because they have to pay for the review of their drug. Now, if I'm paying you to review my drug and your salary depends on my drug being approved, what are the odds of you not approving my drug? Because you lose your income if I don't, if I don't do that. And that needs that. And there's a revolving door. A lot of people don't realize that almost all senior FDA officials, when they leave the FDA, they go work for Big Pharma.
Exactly.
And then you have Big Pharma researchers who leave Big Pharma and then go into the FDA. And now they're in the position where they have to review and approve their former employers' products. And, oh, yeah, that's the guy I hope to get a job with when I retire here in 10 years. So there's a whole lot of conflict of interest there that needs to be addressed. Obviously, banning toxic ingredients, sure, absolutely. Injury and death, it needs to be recognized. The the immunity law is stupid. It's the only place where you're going to force people to take something, whether you want to or not. But if it hurts you or kills you, too bad. You don't get to sue. There's no incentive for them to make their product safe if they know they can't get sued. And then GMOs and toxic pesticides, and natural remedies. There's a lot of things out there that will work just as good as patent medicines, but they're natural, and therefore they can't be patented, and therefore they can't make a shit ton of money on it. So we need to encourage non-synthetic medication if at all possible. Aspirin is one of the oldest medications around. Where does it come from? Birch bark. It came from the bark of birch trees. And then they synthesized it. It's a natural thing. Even opioids, for pain and stuff. Well, they originally came from poppies. Now they're all synthetic. But I think every one of those is reasonable.
I think so too. I meant to mention, by the way, that prior to colonialism, that Native Americans ate a tremendous amount of fat, and yet they were very lean. The human body does not need carbohydrates, and today we have a lot of high glycemic value carbohydrates, which is where the obesity epidemic comes from. But in addition to them being healthy and lean, eating all that fat, everything that they needed, for the most part, like birch bark, was available to them, and they discovered these things and used natural remedies. So I personally feel there's a time and a place for everything. Like, I think on the medicinal side, if you have an acute condition, you've been in a bad wreck, whatever the case may be, that there's some definitely justifiable uses there. But our primary care physicians, most of them are terrible now. So Jeff, tell me what's going on with you, because by the insurance mandate, they've got 7 minutes to get you in and out. So what exactly is bothering you, Jeff? Oh, okay. Let me punch in those symptoms. Okay. So there's 6 different prescriptions I could give you here. I'm going to give you this one. And most of the time it's because they're being comped on the back end for the scripts. I have multiple friends who are doctors who've told me how shady this crap is. And other than giving referrals, that's it. All they do is write scripts and referrals to specialists. And I know a lot of people who left being a primary care physician and went another way. Like, I have a good friend of mine who was the first DPC in Florida, direct primary care. And what she does is way beyond primary care. She's an amazing doctor. And she did it because she was so disenfranchised with the sick care. We don't have health care, the sick care. All right, we've got a couple miscellaneous things that we're going to cover here quickly, because I saw this one coming a mile away. But Gavin Newsom poised to become leader of the resistance to Trump. And most of you are probably aware that this is Nancy Pelosi's nephew. And the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. This guy is absolutely crooked. He's got no values to speak of, caught cheating on his wife, blah, 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 blah. Look at what he's done to California. He's absolutely destroyed California, financially speaking. And next one that we have, I like this. I like Benny Johnson. He posted pretty good stuff on X. So Donald Trump wins 312 electoral votes. Hey, libs, this is a landslide, and it's about to get much worse. National voter ID is coming, mass deportation of criminal aliens, along with new census maps, greatly empowering red states. The Obama dynasty is officially over. You failed. You're welcome to add to that if you'd like, Jeff.
I love the sentiment. Let's hope it all comes out that way. Right.
So at the end of every episode of Survival Dispatch News, we typically have action items for our audience. If we're discussing something that's bad, we make suggestions on activities they can do to have a positive effect on whether it's the country or themselves or something in between. And as I was thinking this through today on, well, what kind of homework can we give our audience in light of all this positive stuff, that's fixing to happen vis-a-vis Donald Trump? And I couldn't come up with much other than I would love to see proof of how smart our audience is by having y'all take the current citizenship test online and report back in the comments or report in the next video over in the chat what you scored. And my inclination is that we got a pretty smart audience. And I'm not saying that because it's our audience. I'm saying this because, Jeff, as you know, they're wickedly active in our Signal chat group. And there's a lot of really smart people in there. And I'll be honest, I don't have time to read everything in there, but on more than one occasion, I've looked at what's being posted and thought to myself, I didn't know that, and learn from them. So anyway, that's your homework for tonight. Take the current citizenship test and report back in the comments either tonight or in the chat room tomorrow. We'll be back tomorrow at our usual 7 p.m. Eastern. One more shameless plug for our Patreon, patreon.com/. That's coming right up.
Okay.
That'll be, we'll wrap up on that, but thank you. It's like I tell people, I don't have Alzheimer's, but I got some-timers. Sometimes I remember, sometimes I forget. So shameless plug, patreon.com/survival dispatch. Go check it out. Don't have anything else to say on that topic. If you haven't mashed the like button, please do so. I've got everything up on all my monitors. I rearranged my office, so I've got like 5 monitors in front of me here. Actually 2, 4, 5. We peaked somewhere around like 700 concurrent viewers when I add up everywhere that we're streaming to. So if you could mash the like button, we would greatly appreciate it. We're going to do the conflicted question. Jeff and I will answer it. We want to see your answers down below in the comment section, and then we're done. So here we go. With no immediate law enforcement of any kind, neighborhood after neighborhood are raided by looters. The neighborhoods that survived the longest had checkpoints and barricades to deter invaders. How would you construct a barricade and man a checkpoint in your neighborhood if you needed to? And clearly I have to go to you first, whether it's just the 2 of us or there's 10 of us. You always go first.
Okay. Well, I can only speak to my own personal neighborhood and I've got it easy because there's only one way in and one way out by vehicle, and it's right by my house. So I could, what I would do is for a barricade, I would probably park a Jeep or something across there, so you have a movable one. You can let in people you want to and keep out people you don't. And then I've got plenty of places that I could keep cover on that and get the neighbors involved. Now, the other aspect of that is, how do you keep people out who are coming in by foot? Because choke points and that like that don't always work. One thing you look for are, can you channel them into certain places? So if they come in where you know they're going to be there. You can do that with plants that are stickers and cactus and things like that. You can do it with fences and things, but you channel them into limited areas where one person can basically cover, maybe several hundred yards of perimeter because they only have one way in. And it's got to be some sort of a physical barrier. It could be water, can be ditch. Another thing is to set up even low-tech alarms. You get cans with rocks in them or glasses, 2 glass bottles that clink together on a string that if someone goes through and hits it, you get a sonic alarm that then you can go check it out and deter whoever's coming in. But it's all about channeling, funneling, and limiting. And so you just got to look at your neighborhood. If you've got multiple roads into your neighborhood, maybe you just block off some of them where they can't come in with cars. Because looters, we're not talking Walking Dead, but if they're going to steal stuff, they got to take it with them. So if they're on foot, they're limited in what they can take. So if they want to take a lot of stuff, they're going to need a vehicle. And that helps you limit the access into your neighborhood.
Yeah, absolutely. I forgot to mention something earlier, by the way, that I don't know if you caught the news, but Jerome Powell is saying that if Trump asks him to leave, he's not going to do it. He's going to maintain control of the Fed. So I don't think some of these people got the memo that this ain't the same Trump administration as last time. You're not getting away with that shit. So anyway, so we have a home in Florida. We have a home in Georgia, North Georgia, the Blue Ridge Mountains, and it would be very different how I would protect one versus the other. Here in Florida, fencing, obviously, the fences are a great way to go, pretty quick to install. But what it would also do would be to dig ditches all the way around our community. And we already have some of that stuff because, we're virtually at sea level, not that many feet above. So there's all kinds of drainage ditches and retaining ponds here in Florida. And I'm telling you right now that if we dug a drainage ditch, that went around our entire subdivision, it would be full of gators in no time. And I'm not joking. I put an offer in to buy a house in a gated community west of here in the country, I don't know, 14 years ago. And I signed the contract on a Friday, and on Monday I got a call from my real estate agent saying, hey, the seller needs you to tear up the contract. And I said, really? Why is that? And it was a beautiful home, and it was waterfront, blah, blah, blah. And he said, well, it appears that somebody else in the family is going to challenge their authority to actually sell the property because somebody died, the person who owned it died or whatever. So initial reaction was kind of upset because it was something specific that we were looking for. But in hindsight, turns out that I met a guy who lives in that. It's called Breakaway Trails. Years later, I met this guy, and Freddie's his name. He turned around and said to me, he said, holy crap, man, like everybody in my neighborhood are losing their dogs. You know, the gators that are in all the drainage ponds and ditches are just like snatching everybody's dogs. And I mean, we've got dogs, we're dog lovers. And I thought, yeah, that's legit. I'm glad that that's, looked after. The only other thing that I would add here that you didn't bring up would be drone sentries and having somebody manning drones and being able to get that, eagle view on everything. Now, if we were in Georgia, we live at the end of a private road, at the end of a gated private driveway, at the very top of the mountain, and it ends at our home. And on 3 sides of our property, it falls off. It's a good 30 plus degree fall off all the way around. And then that's all covered up in laurels. And if you've ever tried to walk through laurels, it's like a wooden jail, for lack of a better term. We don't have a whole lot of trouble securing that location. I'll just leave it at that sort of thing. So
your Jerome Powell comment, all they should go to him and say, okay, we're going to audit the Fed. And if there's any discrepancies, we're going to hold you criminally responsible. I bet he'd resign in 24 hours.
I like it for sure. All right. So we appreciate everybody tuning in tonight. Appreciate your time and intelligence and opinion. Jeff, everybody else out there, please like, share, comment, and subscribe. God bless America.
If you carry a firearm and discharge your weapon in self-defense, you could face hundreds of thousands of dollars in legal fees and expenses. So carry the protection of CCW Safe, Self-Defense Legal Services membership. Upfront payment of all criminal and civil defense costs with no out-of-pocket for members. Unlimited defense budgets, unmatched legal expertise. Carry the same level of support police officers have. Carry CCW Safe, the highest caliber.